Okay, so today I'm going to talk about daycare for children when you have a bullying personality disorder. And I understand that what I'm going to be going through here, probably a lot of it doesn't apply to everybody. Probably a lot of what I'm talking about doesn't apply to everybody because not everybody who's avoidant personality disorder has kids. Anyway, I'm going to go through the different types of daycare options, and I'm not talking about work either. I'm not talking about can you get a job or whatever. I'm talking specifically if you need daycare and you have children and you have avoidant personality disorder, what I think is the best option and what the drawbacks are specifically for the personality disorder, not for the actual type of care. What happens when you do each time. I think that the best option, if you can possibly pull it off, was not available to me, would be that if your, I don't know what you'd want to call it, I'm trying to be PC, if your spouse, if your partner, if the child's other parent, if the person you live with you, that lives with you, would be able to care for the child full time. Um, and I mean, if they live with you, they'd be able to care for the child full time, because it would be less disruptive to you, and it wouldn't be another person you'd have to deal with. It would be somebody that you already had hanging around and knew their quirks, etc. I think the next best ideal would be to be the one who stays home to take care of the child and have the other person work. The issue with that, of course, is you do need to still take your kids out to, interact with the world, and then you're coming up with random people that you're dealing with. I think that absolutely the least ideal, although it sounds good on paper, the least ideal option would be to have a family member or a close friend be the one who babysits your child, if they're not, somebody that is your partner. Because here's why. First of all, because if it's somebody who's related to you, then they feel like they have a say in the child. And, if it's your partner, then you basically have to agree on something. But usually, if it's somebody who isn't, is a relative, I mean, the people become avoidant for a reason. And more often than not, it's a family issue. That's where the abuse is, and that's where the pattern of abuse is, and that's where somebody thinking they can get over on everything. So if it's, say, your parents or your sibling or something like that that's taking care of your kid, then they, in almost all cases, I have yet to find a family situation with an avoidant person where the other family members think that they have the right to a say to what goes on in their family's life, and in the avoidant person's life, and all their kids too. I mean, I can definitely, my mother, horror stories. We went and visited her once, and went to the bathroom and came out, and she was doing something with my kid, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And I swear to God, my mother said to me about my son, "A mother needs to know this." And I looked right at her and I said, "I'm his mother. You're not his mother." And it just like broke her brain. She couldn't get that because, of course, if it was mine, then it automatically was hers. Now, and she wasn't babysitting him, but that's the type of thing you deal with. Now, even if it's like, say, your cousin or something like that you're babysitting, that you're paying them, like, even the going rate. When it's a family member, even if you're paying them going rate, even if you're paying them more, I don't understand this attitude. But again, we're talking 100%. Maybe there are people that are beautiful and lovely out there, but in my experience, across the board, if it's a relative that's babysitting you for you, they feel like they're doing you a favor, and then you owe them back. And, I mean, no. I mean, and then you can get sort of in kind of a pushback between them, because you're like, excuse me, I'm paying you $300 a week to watch my kid. Who's doing who the favor? And it's just bad. It's just bad. Plus, their relatives, they're chatty. They want to talk to you. This is another big thing. I mean, if you've been to work and you have been totally, totally stressed, and then you want to just get home as soon as possible, then, just to decompress and to be away from people, and talking to people is the worst thing you can imagine. Then having to go pick up your kid every single day from somebody who wants to gossip with you for half an hour. Oh my God. Like, kill me now. I think that actually would be worse as an avoidant person than the 8 hours of work you did beforehand. Oh, it would be awful. I've had that kind of situation, incredibly short-term situation, where somebody just a little bit too close to me and just want to get chatty, and I'm just like, get away from this. Anything would be better. The best situation that I had, which is in a big way the worst situation, what you would consider to be the worst situation, is a big sort of corporate daycare place. Actually, the place that I had for my kid was a church organized it, so it wasn't like totally corporate, but it was still like huge, and multiple employees, and some of it was like really harsh. For example, my kid was 16 months old, and if I didn't bring all the food and the milk, they just wouldn't feed him all day. I mean, that's pretty horrifying. And a couple times they did say, by the way, we're out of this. And it's like, okay, run straight down to the corner store, which I'm sure was like a quarter of their income was paying, people coming in to buy stuff for their kids to take to the daycare. And then another quarter of it was probably paying, making lunches for the people that work there. But that was kind of stressful, and that was like another thing that just had to have on your list to make sure you were there, because they had no leeway whatsoever. However, because of that, first of all, the people that were there were all certified, so you were sure that they were adequate carers. There were many of them. You didn't have to worry about somebody called in sick that they would then, you'd be stuck because nobody was there to call in sick. No one was there to cover because somebody was out sick. And probably the best thing about it as an avoidant person was they would just have like these cards where they would write up information about the kid. Because, they would have morning staff and they would have evening staff, and it wouldn't be one person all day long. And they might have multiple people going from room to room, depending on, babies need them, toddlers need them. Then the kids come home from school, and so they go from place to place. So it wasn't one person that stayed with a kid. Normally, that's like, oh, that's awful. That's the worst thing that could happen for a child. In my son's case, he never had any problem whatsoever with getting multiple people taking care of him. He had the same level of care the entire time. But I didn't have to interact with the person. And I could get this card every day telling me what happened, if there was anything that happened. And then, updates of, okay, well, he needs to have this or he needs to have that, or, he's out of diapers. Make sure I bring him in. It was great. As an avoidant person, coming home from work and having the smallest, and this sounds disgusting, and I get this is daycare, you would think that you would need something. As a matter of fact, it was usually me that would say, hey, did anything happen that was out of the ordinary? And then you get a fairly, I don't want to say curt, but just straightforward, nope, everything was the same. And so it was very reassuring. It was also very little interaction with people, and it was different people all the time. Now, some people with their avoidance, they don't like being around different people all the time, in which that case, that would kind of suck for you. But for me, I'm the type of person with my avoidance where if I'm interacting with the same people over and over and over again, then I'm like on their radar, and I just no, don't I I'm not interested in getting the cute little story of your kid did this. Again, they would write the cute little stories on the cards, but I don't need to have somebody tell me, hey, he did this today, he did this today. Let's have like a little bonding moment over me telling you about your kid. No, not after 9 hours in a job where I was interacting with people on the phone and everything else all day long. No, 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 no. Anyway, the next category is sort of like, well, I'll go straight. There are home daycare centers, which again, you can either, you can get like a cousin to watch a kid, or you can get somebody that's certified in their home. The issue with that is basically all the bad things that you don't get from the big box one, which is, yes, you've got one person there all day, that's great, but then you've got to interact with the same person every day. You will hear the stories. If they're out sick, you're screwed. And and then you don't have different types of people to interact with your kid, which can be a problem. Like my son had one time, and this woman was, I kind of liked her because at the time I didn't realize he was autistic. I just thought he was sort of like running me ragged. And she was pretty strict about what she had done. But I mean, sometimes she was just so focused on what she was doing that she was kind of completely bogus and lame about it, not paying attention. Like, my son in the first grade, he broke his arm under the care of my mother, but that's beside the point. Because it was spring break, and again, he had this one person, she was on vacation, so I had to find somebody to cover. So my mother was covering for that week. And he broke his arm, but then he went back to this lady, and she was telling me, they were playing wiffle ball, and he got hit, and he was just complaining, and I'm like, he got hit? He got hit on the upper part of his arm where the forearm was broken? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, that probably vibrated into his broken bone, and it probably hurt. And she was, oh my God, I feel so bad. I was like telling him to just stop complaining. That sort of thing can happen where you get sort of one perspective. And then the other thing is to sort of like a mix of those two. I had another situation where it was one woman, she owned a company, she leased space for it. She was definitely the primary, and she was there all the time, but she also hired other people to work with her. And that one, it was sort of like a mix of all the bad things. Like, you had to interact with somebody who would tell you what was going on. They didn't do the card thing every day. But she did have multiple staff, so it wasn't a problem with her not being there and having to find somebody else to cover. But like, for instance, at that place, it sounds like my kid. I mean, I was told all these things. Oh, he broke a bone. He's a boy. Congratulations. In this daycare, he fell and split his lip open and needed stitches. And because there were other people there, one of them came with me, which is actually like the best thing ever. Now, that would not happen in a big place, and that couldn't have happened in a small place because they were getting to know you. So one of them came with us to basically keep me from dying on the way, freaking out, to get his stitches. But with her, I mean, this was 13 years ago, and we still run into her every once in a while, like once a year, and then we have to interact again. So it's a higher level of interaction. So those are all the different sort of categories of daycare. And again, I would say if you can get your partner to watch the kid, or you can find a bigger place that's sort of less personable, as gross as that seems, those are probably the best options for somebody with avoidant personality disorder, as far as not as triggering, especially after a long day of work.